My name is Rhett Danyluk. Thank you for joining us today for the presentation on H5Ps. I'm an instructional designer here at the University of Regina with Center for Continuing Education, Flexible Learning Division. I work with a lot of instructors on creating online or blended learning environments for students. So there was a lot of H5P integration in that, which is why I was asked to do this. I do want to preface this presentation by acknowledging that H5P is quite an intimidating topic for some, but it doesn't need to be that way. So I'm going to try taking a high-level approach, scratch the surface. We'll dive a little bit into the weeds, showing some examples along the way. But my goal is to not overwhelm anybody. So if I do, feel free to ask any questions along the way. Before we really get started here, sorry, I just got to click on this to get the slides going again. I do want to take a moment for a land acknowledgement. The University of Regina is located on Treaty 4 territory, the territories of the Nehewak, Anishinaabeg, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I recognize the privilege that I have to live, work, and play on these lands. And in this land acknowledgement, I want to take a second to think of what it means to me. And I reflect back on just last week, I was in this very room with a presentation hosted by Daryl Eisbeister of the U of S Gwenna Moss Center on indigenization of content. And he led the classroom and started it off by saying that, acknowledging that there's a little bit of an implied hierarchy in traditional Western classrooms. And that's not in line with Indigenous ways of knowing. So he wanted to tear down that hierarchy by saying, even though I'm standing here at the front, we can all learn from each other here. So feel free, like I said, to ask questions at any time. Any comments that you have, please let me know. And we can all learn from each other here. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Moving on, we are going to, here's a quick overview of how the presentation is going to go. We'll do a quick introduction to what H5P actually is itself, why you should use it in your classroom. We'll follow that up with some demonstration and examples before we talk about when to use it and maybe when it's not so appropriate to use. We'll wrap up with some resources and questions and maybe a little bit of time for demo, depending on how much time it takes to go through all of this. But yeah, without further ado, what is H5P? We'll start by going over what it is not. It is not HP steak sauce. So I'm sorry if you thought this seminar was going to teach you about innovative ways to use HP steak sauce to teach your students, but it is not. Now, if this is your first H5P presentation and you're going to attend others, that won't be the first time you hear that joke. If this is your second, I'm sorry for the repetition, but I had to slide it in there.
Of course you do.
So moving on, what is H5P? H5P really is a tool that you can use to enrich your learning experiences. You can use it to engage your students in interactive experiences, get them working hands-on and applying what they're learning. Whether it's interactive videos, quizzes, questions, or just simply clicking and dragging and interacting with the material, it gets them to pause and interact. We'll look a little bit at what the name comes from. I know when I started working with H5P, I thought, what is H5P? What does that mean? And that name comes from it being a HTML5 package on the web. And what an HTML5 package is basically what the whole web is designed around. And what that means is there's no special tools that you need to access this. It works, it's designed with the most recent web standards in mind, which means you can access this really anywhere that you can access the web, which is the next point here. It's a browser-based tool. What that means is anything that can access the internet can access the content you create on H5P. So for example, a cell phone, a tablet, computer, desktop, laptop, of course, but anything that can access the internet can access the H5P technology, making it really accessible for learners. My next point here is where most people can get a little bit overwhelmed when they see it is that there's over 50 content types that you can design with H5P, which is quite a lot. But I wanted to include it because it really lets you know that no matter what subject you teach, there's probably a tool that you can utilize for H5P. I work with H5P every day, and I probably haven't even used all 50 or more content types, but at least I know that if I have a new idea, I can look at them, and there's always examples, and we'll go into a little bit of the resources later, but there's all these examples that H5P provides, so you can see how to work and use them. One of the things that isn't so intimidating about H5P is people see what they produce, what you can produce with H5P, and they think, oh no, I can never do that. I'm not very techy. But there is no coding involved in H5P. The user interface is very, very friendly with blank text boxes. That you fill out. It's quite intuitive when you're creating them, and it's not as intimidating as you might think. So no coding knowledge needed at all. So we're going to now look at why you might want to use H5P. And I think one of the key reasons is that it encourages active learning. We know right now that we're always fighting for our students' attention. And traditional methods of teaching right now, they might be reading along in their textbook or listening to a lecture or a live lecture in the classroom, but we don't know if they're actually retaining that, applying it, and that's where H5P comes in hand. It gives them a chance to do hands-on application of what they just learned and apply it in real time. So it's that pause gets them to actually do something rather than passively intake the information. They get to apply it right away. So that's one of the main benefits of that. And of course, that leads to enhanced engagement and retention of knowledge for the students as well. There's wide applicability of H5P, as I mentioned, with over 50 content types. You really can apply this to almost any subject. You can find a way. I'm always amazed at the way that I see people use tools that I've used quite frequently, but in a different and new innovative way. So there's lots of different ways you can apply these tools. And one of the powerful features, I think, as a teacher is you can integrate immediate feedback into it. We do know that when you're interacting with your students, they really, really value feedback that they receive. But we don't necessarily have time to be able to give feedback to each and every student in real time. However, if you build these exercises with feedback integrated, they get that feedback right away. They can understand why they were right, why they were wrong, and really solidify their understanding of the content. So, and I will show example of how that looks later on as well. The content on H5P is reusable and shareable. So what that means is you can, I get asked from instructors that I work with, hey, this is a really great activity that we created. It's for their online course or their blended course. Can I also put this in my face-to-face course? The answer is yes. It's really easy to duplicate, reuse content, and likewise, you can share it with your colleagues as well. There are repositories out there as well that I'm going to share later on in this presentation where there is banks of H5P content that's created with Creative Commons publishing, and you can access those to reuse those or modify them, use them for idea inspiration, but lots of really good tools out there. And then very lastly, it's easy to use. From a student perspective, it's very intuitive. We do suggest, the very first time you include one, maybe have a little bit of instruction so the students know what their expectations are when they find that content, but it's very intuitive. They would figure it out without the instructions. Like I said, from the instructor side of things, it's not complicated in creating. There's no special coding knowledge needed. There's tutorials out there. There's a wide community of support. So yeah, these are all, I think, the main reasons why I think you should use H5P. With all of that in mind, we'll move over to see some of these H5Ps in action. This little screenshot I've included here is just a small portion of those over 50 content types. I didn't do it to overwhelm anybody, but I just wanted to show the vastness of it. I couldn't include all 50 if I wanted to, sorry, more than 50 if I wanted to, but I did want to show how many that there really are. And the team that works on H5P, they're always growing. They're always including new content types to include as well. But I'm going to go ahead and show some examples that we've created and used here at the U of R. I've tried to include a variety of both easy to create and then a little bit more difficult to create. Nothing is too difficult that you wouldn't be able to do it, but I wouldn't suggest you start at some of those more difficult ones for your very first time. Okay, so the first example I have on screen here is an example I created in a language course. So what you have up top might be what traditionally students see. So this is for a German language class. They have the German on the left, the English on the right. This might be something that the students would see in a textbook, and you can kind of see how this would be passively learned. Like they read it, they might not retain it, they don't even know the correct pronunciation of it. But with H5P, we can really enhance that, and we've done this in a few ways. So the first example here, we've used dictation cards. As you can see, there's a little bit of an explanation for the students. Listen to the sound clip, guess the meaning, and then turn the card over to see if they're correct. I'm not sure if we have the volume turned up in this room, but I'll try. We'll click this and see if it plays.
Das ist.
There's the little instructor voice note. So the students can then hear the correct pronunciation. They can take a turn at guessing what it means and turn the card over. That is, and they have the chance to mark it right or wrong for their own study purposes. So let's say I got it right. You can see that there's a countdown here on how many cards they have left in this word set. So we'll go through all of this just to show what I want to show at the very end of this exercise. H5P actually keeps track of what they got right and what they got wrong on their self-assessment. And it gives the students a little summary of how they did and an overall score. And then they can go to the next round where they'll receive a mix of some of the same cards or all of the same cards with more of a focus on where they got wrong, and they can retest themselves as many times as they want. So this time there's only 7 cards in the deck rather than 10. So it's a great self-study tool. Another way that we've enhanced this vocabulary is through the use of dictation. This time it's a little bit different. The students would be asked to listen to a voice clip and then write out what they hear, checking their spelling along the way and seeing if they're right. So again, just a quick little demonstration.
Was ist?
So we can go ahead and put in what we heard, see if we were right. It says here, I only got 2 out of 24 because of course I didn't do the whole list, but the students have an opportunity to get that feedback where they got wrong, where they got right, shows them the correct spelling and whatnot there, so they can figure out right away and retry as many times as they want. Finally, another simple tool we've used in this vocabulary exercise is just building in this recording device within the content itself. So the students can choose to record, play back their recording and compare their pronunciations to the instructors, which are right above this content, to see how they're doing. And of course, yes, this is something that you can achieve with your phone, but when you build it in with the content itself, the students are much less likely to get distracted along the way. They don't open their phone and then go to TikTok and then forget they were ever studying German and then get lost along the way. So that was just a quick little example of a few of the simple, easy to use ones.
And what name was this on?
Okay. Yes, so the very first one that I showed here, this is dialogue cards. The second tool that I showed is dictation. And this third one is just called, I think it's just called audio recorder.
So you put 3 back to back.
Yes, you can put as many as you want on a page as well. And in this case, It can get quite cluttered if you add too many. I just kind of wanted to group them all together if they related together for this presentation's sake, but in the actual class itself, it looks a little bit different. The next example is just a true and false question, but I wanted to demonstrate the feedback feature that I was talking about. So this is a biology question asking about ATP regeneration. I'm not sure if anybody's a bio major in here. I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and just guess that these two mechanisms equally contribute to the ATP regeneration. So that's a true statement. And I was wrong. However, you see that feedback shows up here and you understand as a student why you were wrong. I can see that the substrate level mechanism is only responsible for 4 out of 32, while oxidative is responsible for the other 28. So it gives you that feedback right away. You can go ahead and show the solution. Of course, in this case, it's true and false, so there's only one other option, but you can retry this as many times as you want, which is really, really powerful as a student to be able to get that feedback and retry and revisit this maybe a month later when you're studying for the midterm. So it's a really, really good tool for the students. Drag and drop is another interesting and good tool to use. In this example, I wanted to demonstrate how it might look like in the context of an actual lesson. So here is, this is an asynchronous biology course. The content that the students would read is right here. And as they scroll down, they find the H5P to test themselves on the material that they just learned. In this case, they are labeling a diagram, and they would go ahead and just, again, I'm not a biology major, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do here, but they would go ahead and interact with the image and check how they did. I only got 50, or not even 50%, but I could retry as many times as I want. In this case, you also can disable the show solution. So in this case, the solution isn't available to the students, but they can retry as many times as they want, as the solution really is right above them. So they're expected to go look and actually learn through that. I wanted to show another example of drag and drop because it's not always going to be focused on just diagrams. In this example, it's text, so you can drag and drop into text as well. This is quite a long example, but I wanted to include it because I wanted to show that H5P has accessibility in mind, and you can go into full screen and then it actually fits onto the screen. There's still some scrolling, but you can see the words here, which you couldn't before. So of course, just like before in the diagram, you can click and drag the words into their respective area and check your knowledge along the way to see how you did. In this example, it's a lot of text, but there doesn't necessarily have to be. In this class, the students are learning about structuring reports and structuring cover letters, things like that. So in this case, instead of dragging into a block of text, they are just rearranging these blocks into how they should look in an actual report. So like I said, the same tool, but used for various different ways, which is the whole purpose of H5P. Hotspots is another interesting tool and another really easy to use one that I wanted to show. There are two different ways to use hotspots. The first one is this graph example. We all know the challenges that come with labeling a diagram. If you want to label every single spot and include information on it, you probably need, say if you have 4 points, you probably need 4 diagrams because it gets quite cluttered and congested. With H5P, you have these little check boxes that you can click on, and it will bring up the information there relevant to the point that you click on. This example is a text example, but I did want to mention that when you click on this, you could bring up a video lecture. It could be a audio lecture. So it's not necessarily restricted to just text. It's just that this example is. The other way to use image hotspots is to test the knowledge on students on what they just learned. So for this, we want students to identify in the absence of oxygen, what cannot be created as an output of the citric acid cycle. So the students would just actually interact with the image and click on it, say maybe 2 CO2 is not going to be. Well, I was wrong. It's a byproduct, not directly related to the transport chain. However, I got that feedback, so I know why I was wrong there. So I'll take a second guess at the 3 NADH. Well, the feedback changed, as you can see. I'm almost right. NADH cannot be oxidized back. It might be the other NAD, and I got that right. Using what I've learned, maybe this one over here. Oh, I was wrong again, but now I know. And again, the NAD plus. So like I said, that feedback is so very valuable for students as they get it in real time. They get to see their mistakes. And yeah, I also wanted to demonstrate the various ways you can use hotspots, both as informational and as an assessment based. The study guide, I believe I used the documentation tool for the study guide. What we've done here is with the instructor, we take the learning objectives and turn them into questions and plug them into the documentation tool, allowing students, giving them a box that they can populate to answer these questions. This is just free form text. They can type in whatever they want for it, and it's to help them study the material. There's just a set of questions that they go through. They can fill it out on their own time. At the end of this little tool is a export page. So if you click on this, it creates a Word document of whatever is inputted. So if the students wanted to work within the LMS, they could, and that Word document would include the answers that they've populated. But if they just wanted to create this document and have a study guide that has only the questions, and then they would work offline to fill out that study guide, then they can do that as well. Again, you have the option to provide answers if you want to. In this case, again, this is to help students study. We provided them the questions and they're expected to go and search for the answers on their own, but providing the answers is always an option. The 360 tour is where things get a little bit more complicated. And again, I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but I wanted to demonstrate some of the cool capabilities of H5P. I'm going to throw this one into full screen to give a better example of it. I believe this was created for an anthropology of death class, which is why it's Spears Funeral Home. And this tool integrates images with it that the students can explore. So this one leads, I'm not going to play this video, but you can see the students have a video here that they can bring up, and it plays for them, gives them a little bit of introduction to the lecture. And then the students have this other prompt to go inside. So they go inside, they're greeted with this other image here and a few more options. So a few videos if they want to go there. And of course, you don't have to explore this in a certain order. They can explore this in any order that they wish to. Say if they wanted to enter the hallway, we'll go ahead and do that. And again, they have other rooms to go through. Let's go into the Centennial room. This is where the 360 comes into play. The other images that I showed were just images you could take with your phone. And that's all that this tool needs is images you take with your phone, a still image. But if you have a 360-degree camera, you can also add a 360-degree image to look around the room and bring attention to certain things. So you can see there's these little pop-ups that come up as you go through. In this one, it's a video for the Centennial room, a little lecture related to it. But say if you wanted to bring students' attention to this piece of art on the wall, you could have a little pop-up there, click on it, it would expand. And again, video lecture, text, audio, whatever you want, images, it can do it all. And I just wanted to show this example because I think it's a good one, but you can relate to other things. I'm thinking of the biology class that I'm working on right now. It might be a really good tool to introduce students to the lab before they actually get to it, where we can include pictures of the coat room and then the actual laboratory and have little information icons on all of the equipment. So that's the whole idea about this. And I'm hoping I'm getting some ideas generated for some of you as well on this little, by these demonstrations. So that's all I'm going to show for the 360 tour. And lastly, as an example, I wanted to also touch on branching scenarios. This one, again, is a little bit more complex in creating, but nothing that you couldn't handle. And I just wanted to show you it because I think it's one of the most powerful tools that is a little bit underutilized, just because it takes a little bit of extra effort. If I was to describe this tool, I would describe it as one of those choose your own adventure novels where you're given a choice and you say, go to page 36 to do this or page 45 for this other choice, because what you do in this tool or what the students do in this tool impacts the result that they get. And rather than explaining it too much, I'll go ahead and give this example. This is in a business course. The students are given a little bit of a text scenario. Again, it could be video if you want it to be, where you've discovered a problem at work and you need to let your boss know. So what are you going to do essentially? We click on proceed and we're given the option. Don't tell your boss what happened or tell your boss what happened. For example's sake, let's not tell our boss. Oh no, they found out anyway. Let's find out why we should tell our boss when a problem occurs, or get that explanation, and we go to proceed. We're faced with another choice. You could quit or apologize and offer to help. For example's sake, again, we're quitters here. We reached to the end. Sorry to see you go, but not sorry. This is why you need to be more transparent and accountable for your actions. But if you do reach the end and not the right way, you can restart the course, learn from your mistakes. We'll hit proceed. This time we're going to tell our boss what happened. Good. Now we have to logically structure our conversation. The students are given this drag and drop activity again. Let's go ahead and fill this out. Here's our problem. Here's how it started. Here's how we can respond. And we can check. We did good here. We're better at this than we are biology. So then we go ahead into our next step and proceed. We're met with another question. Did you know that structuring consulting reports closely match the structure of this conversation? You can hit yes or no. It'll impact what you're presented next. We don't need to go through all of this, but I just wanted to show how you get very different experiences based on how you answer this. So this can be a really, really great tool for like case studies, for example, or just any scenario-based learning. It's a really good tool. We'll just proceed to see what else we have in here. Oh, so we're gonna write a little bit of a report. So you can also build in some of that freehand writing in here as well. And then I think there's one more, email and proceed, and you reach the end. So very different experiences based on how you answer these questions. And that's, I'm sure you can imagine this can be a very powerful tool. It's just, yeah, there is a little bit more involved in creating those because you need to have an answer for every scenario, every path that you take. So a little bit more involved, but utilize tools like AI to help you think of that. And that'll help you out. Well, that brings me to the end of the demonstrations, but I'll jump back into the presentation. If online can bear with me for a moment as I share the correct screen again. Here we go. Back in presentation, I hope. For everyone online, I think we are. Now I want to talk about when is a good time to use H5P. And for that, I think that the best use case for it really is for formative assessment. This allows students to test themselves as they go, before anything is high stakes, give them a chance to test their knowledge, give them a chance to practice and really learn the material. it really reinforces their learning if you give them these opportunities to pause, check their understanding, and that's what the whole idea of formative assessment is. And it's honestly great for confidence building and as well as a study tool. So that's the honestly best case for H5P. The next point is just for highlighting important topics. So we often use it to, we put it around one of the learning outcomes when it appears in the actual content itself. When students see, oh, there's something extra I have to do here, they might connect, oh, this is actually important, and take a little bit more time to learn the material associated with it. So it highlights that active learning that I talked about earlier when we start putting it in with the important concepts for the students. And then the last point here I have is flipped classroom. So what we've done, and this is how we set up that German class, it's a blended approach to learning there. So the students have asynchronous material that they explore all week, and then on Friday they have their synchronous session. Through that asynchronous material that we've provided them, they've had their lessons, they've had their practice, and now when they go to the classroom, rather than having it so much focused on instruction, they can have any questions answered that they had, and then really have hands-on time to apply what they learned with their colleagues, practice their speaking skills with each other. And again, that can work for any type of subject, but I have the German one at the top of my mind because we've just recently worked on it. So I wanted to bring that in as an example. So overall, these tools are really good for reinforcing learning. The students can access the tools at any time and learn at their own pace when they have them available to them in their class. So we also want to touch on when not to use H5P, because although it's a great tool, it's not always, there's certain situations that it doesn't work good for. And that first one is the most important, summative assessment. There are a few issues with actually attaching grades to H5P. The most important one being that it's unreliable at saving. And of course, you don't want that as an instructor. You don't want the student's progress to be lost. There's a few reasons for that. One of them being is that every time an H5P is updated, is that it resets the user data. So if you noticed a spelling mistake, or maybe you chose the wrong answer as correct in a multiple choice and you go and fix that error, everybody who interacted with that, their data is lost and they would have to retry again. So that's not a problem if it's used for formative assessment, but when it's for summative, there you actually run into an issue there. Also for summative assessment, we need to think of accommodation issues. So H5P, if you wanted to set, say, a time limit on they only have 5 minutes to interact with this certain question, that becomes a little bit complicated, and then even a little bit more complicated if there's certain students who need a little bit more than that 5 minutes allotted. So let's just not set restrictions on it. Let's let them use it formatively and interact with it on their own terms, and save the summative assessment tools for the tools designed for that. The next point here is computational questions. I have that example of a formula there. We all know how difficult it can be to even get a formula written out on a computer if you're trying to do it in, say, like a Word document. H5P is no different. It's especially when it comes to marking them, we know in complex computational questions, there are lots of steps, lots of work to show, and it can be difficult in trying to catch all the correct ways of doing so, especially when there are many different correct ways of answering a computational question and getting to that answer. So for that reason, computational questions aren't the best for H5P. And then the last and another very important point is accessibility concerns. Some H5P content is inaccessible to some learners based on their abilities, and I do provide a resource that we'll jump into that kind of highlights which content types are accessible versus which aren't. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't use those ones that aren't accessible. It just means you should provide alternatives if you are including an inaccessible content type. And what I often do is just essentially, I'll have the H5P in the learning material, And underneath it or above it, there will be a link where students can access a PDF, and it's just a text-based version of the content that they would have found within the H5P. Similar to how you would have a description of an image as a text alternative. So like I said, you just want to be aware that there are accessibility concerns to keep in mind, but it shouldn't stop you from using H5P. So actually using H5P, if you are here at the U of R and have a UR courses site, you can work with it in Moodle, it's built in. However, if you're not, there are various other ways you can. So Pressbooks, for example, has H5P integration built into it, and you'll be able to publish and experience H5P that way. WordPress is another way. If you have a WordPress site, there are H5P plugins, and you can integrate H5P that way and play around with it. And if you don't have any of this, Lumi Education is a website that you can sign up for free. I will mention they do try and trick you into paying. You don't have to, you can get past that. But if you really have no other way and you really want to experiment with H5P, Lumi Education is an option for you. So now we can talk a little bit about those resources. I'm not going to jump into each and every one of these, but I will basically talk about them. And I'm very happy to share these slides with anyone that wants, so then you have access to these links as well. So the basics and tutorials are self-titled. They are both published by h5p.org and talk about the basics of using H5P, and the tutorials walk you through step by step how to interact and build out each specific content type. The accessibility guide is something I do want to jump into because I've touched on it a little bit earlier. And this is something, I think it's published on an H5P forum, something that the H5P community came together and produced, but it's a really good resource. So I know I'm gonna have to share my screen again. So just bear with me as I do that.
I think it's sharing.
You know if it's the right one? No, it's on the PowerPoint. Okay. Now we're sharing the right screen here. So this is that accessibility guidelines. It's a little bit of a, you have to scroll down a little bit of a way to see it, but then you get this nice, neat, easy to understand table that explains whether something is accessible or not. Really what you're concerned with is everything in that accessible column to see if it has a checkbox or a cross for no. And if it does, when you're coming across that and you're thinking about building an H5P, you just want to ask yourself, okay, what can I do to provide an alternative in case that won't make sense? So for example, here we can see that the dictation exercise is not accessible. That was the one I showed earlier where the students could hear a voice clip and then type out the proper spelling of what they heard. And of course, yeah, that isn't accessible for someone with hearing impairment. So you just want to think of those things. And it gives you an opportunity to think about it before you actually encounter the accessibility challenge in your work. So I'm going to go back to the presentation here, if I can find it, to open up this next link that I have, which is the eCampus Ontario H5P Studio. Now, this is an excellent resource, and I'm just going to double check that I'm sharing the right screen again. I am. And this is an excellent resource put on by eCampus Ontario, which is a really large repository of H5Ps that people have created. Some of them you can't access it, but a lot of it you can. So you can see there's licenses on the right-hand side. So there's also Creative Commons, and if you see that, you most likely can reuse any of these and you know, either reuse it or modify it for your own classroom. So as an example, we can search up a subject here. We've been talking about biology. So let's see that and see if there have been any H5Ps within this community here built for biology. And now we have quite a few different examples of stuff that has already been created. So again, this would be really good for idea generation. The type of H5P is also listed here, so you can have an idea of if you already have an idea of what you want to find, you might be able to zone in to see what other people have already done. You can see here, somebody also thought about using the 360 tour for a lab. We'll click into that to see what they built. And then you get to see what was already built. So we have the 360 tour here of the lab. We can click and drag. I'm not sure what information they've provided here, but we can click on the pop-up. And in this case, it's just text-based information. But yeah, this is, like I said, something that already exists. And if you can think of a use for it, it's out there for you to use. There are, let's just see, I will mention that with this, you sometimes will come across things that aren't fully developed yet. I don't know why sometimes they get published even though they're not fully developed, but sometimes that happens. But as you explore this, if you want to reuse anything, if it's enabled that the author has allowed that, you have this little reuse button. You can click on it and you can download the H5P file, which then you can go and upload in whichever interface you're using, whether that be Pressbooks or UR Courses or Moodle, whatever you're using, you can upload it into and edit it. Or just use it as is, if that's what you wish to do so. If anybody wants to volunteer a subject, we can go ahead and search and see if there's any content for that, or we can jump back to the presentation. I'll give the chat a second to see if they're interested. Or I could even just put this link into the chat, so if they want to play around, they can. There we go. Then we'll take a look at the next link we have in our presentation. And that is, I'm going to skip AI prompt recipes for now and open up this H5P difficulties just for a second. This is a tool I would, if you're using H5P for the first time, a little resource I would want you to look at before you make your first content type. And it's just because it organizes on what is easy to use and easy to create versus what is more advanced and complex. So we don't want anyone to become too overwhelmed when they are creating their first H5P. So maybe stick to the left-hand side of this table, stick with the easy ones on your very first one. But like I said, it's quite intuitive, but I just wanted to include that in there so you have something to look at when you are creating your very first one. Then the last link I have, or the second last, because we skipped it, is AI prompt recipes. This is a tool that you can use to kind of speed up your work if you like using AI. This is published by h5p.org, but they've presented these recipes that you can plug into an AI tool in order to, the output of this will result in something that's formatted exactly in the way that H5P needs it. So it speeds up what you're doing. Of course, you're going to want to take time to verify the content, but it really speeds things up. So in this example that it shows here, they're making a quiz about Northern Lights. All that you do is plug in this code, and then the output in ChatGPT or whatever, it gives you exactly what you need for the H5P, and then you have something that the students can actually interact with. This is the result of that. So again, something to think about as you're creating H5Ps. If you think, I don't have the time to, well, sometimes you can use some of these tools to help speed things up for yourself. Before I jump into a quick demonstration where we can create an H5P together here, I'm going to share the presentation again, or it looks like it is sharing, thankfully. Here is my contact information if you want it, and same with flexible learning. Again, we will send out this presentation to anybody who wants it, so you don't need to frantically write anything down here.
We'll just send it to everyone who's registered along with the slide link.
Okay, excellent. So then maybe if we want to, we can take a quick example so I can show you how unintimidating it really is to create an H5P. My example will be in Moodle, so if you're comfortable with UR courses, you'll know what I'm doing here. But basically in a course, you just want to turn editing on and then scroll to where you would go to add something to your course, add an activity or resource, and then H5P is one of the options there. Now, this page is essentially what any page looks like when you're adding an H5P. So whether you're in Pressbooks or anything like that, the interface of H5P itself is the same. So here are all the different content types. So you might want to go ahead and go in with an idea of what you want to use, because again, it can be overwhelming to have a list of 50+ things to scroll through. Let's think for this example, we want to do multiple choice. We can search it and find it, click on it, and we're put right into the editor. Now, as I mentioned, everything is quite intuitive here. So here's the question that the students will be asked. Let's make it, is H5P, or I want to make it multiple choice. Select all that are true about H5P. So we will say, it is good on steak. It increases retention of knowledge. And let's add another one here. It's easy to use. And we could just leave it at that with 3 choices for this example. We'll hit save and display. And once it's saved, we will have our very first H5P created. So it's really, really that simple. Oh, I forgot to choose what is right. I gotta go back in there. Even I make mistakes. So it's correct that it increases retention of knowledge, and it's correct that it's easy to use. We'll go ahead, save and display, and then we can test it out. But yeah, that's really how easy it is to use. We've already got our very first one made. If we wanted to include some feedback in there, you can add certain feedback that would show up if certain options are chosen. So with the steak example, we could put incorrect. You're thinking of HP steak sauce, for example. But with that, I want to see if we have any questions from anyone in the room or online that we can address in the last few minutes that we have here.
This is Donna. I have a question. You had talked about how some of the difficulties with using Pressbooks for summative assessment. So is that the standalone version of H5P where you had those difficulties?
We've had these difficulties specifically in Moodle. So that's the LMS that we use here. I'm really not too sure how it would work if integrated into Pressbooks. I don't know if Pressbooks itself saves the user data and cookies, so it would remember what students have done what, because Pressbooks is often an open source where you don't need to log in to access the actual book. So if H5Ps were integrated into that book, I don't think it would be tied to a specific user or be able to tell who did what, if that makes any sense.
There is a grade book with it now.
Oh, there is a grade book with it. Okay. Maybe it works. I'm not too familiar with the grade book in Pressbooks itself, so you can log in.
If it's integrated, like you can integrate it with the LTI in your learning management system. and then have them set up the grade book, and then
Mhm.
it's not integrated with the learning management system, but
Okay. Well, I would just caution if you're trying to use it in Pressbooks as a summative assessment, maybe play around specifically with those things that I've mentioned, like updating an H5P, make one, put it in the book and attach it to the grade book, complete it as a student, and then as the instructor, go ahead and update that and see if that student data is still there or if it was lost. I would just approach it with caution.
I was looking for a way in like a vocabulary quiz to have a list of words and a list of definitions, and I was trying to do the drag and drop, but it seemed really awkward.
Okay, yeah, you can definitely do that. I have used it before. What was awkward about it?
Guess I don't know enough about the tool. I should learn more about it, but I couldn't figure out how to get everything to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so definitely the H5P tutorials are great. When it comes to that, the drag and drop I know actually can be a little bit tricky when it comes to creating the boxes that you match things up to. And there's just an important step there, which we can take this offline, but there's an important step there where there's certain boxes and the default setting is only allowing you to pull the correct answer to where it needs to go, and it won't let you go to any of the other boxes. So then it's not too challenging, but it's just an extra step involved in the creation
I'll
process.
give you a call sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. If nobody else has any other questions, I think we can wrap for the day, and I thank you for joining us. Yeah.
and thank you, Rhett. Thanks so much for your presentation. It's very
Absolutely.
valuable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good.